Let me tell you something that could change your life forever. If you try to hold everything together on your own, you are already carrying a weight you were never created to bear. Life will crush you when you try to play God instead of trusting God. You will drown in stress, fear, regret, and confusion when you think your strength is enough. But there's a moment right here, right now, when you must make the most important decision of your life. Let God take over your situation. You have cried enough tears behind closed doors. You have wrestled with thoughts that torment you in the silence of the night. You've tried everything, logic, strategy, even desperation. But nothing changes. Doors remain closed. Peace stays far away. People fail you. Time runs out. But God does not fail. When you release your grip and surrender the situation into the mighty hands of God, you don't lose control. You gain divine intervention. You gain the power of the one who sees what you cannot see, who knows what you cannot know, and who can do what no human effort can ever accomplish. Because when God takes over, chaos must bow. When God takes over, storms that threaten to destroy you are suddenly still. The very same waves that try to drown you become the foundation you walk on. God does not need your ability. He requires your surrender. He does not ask you to be strong. He asks you to be still and know that He is God. There is a moment when God waits for your permission to intervene, not because He lacks the power to act, but because He respects the will He gave you. And when you choose to let go and let God take over, everything changes. God is not interested in half-surrendered hearts. He's not moved by words that are empty of trust. He responds to the soul that kneels before Him and says, I can't, but you can. I don't know, but you do. I'm lost, but you are the way. And when you say that, not just with your mouth, but with every fiber of your being, God steps into your fire, not to take you around it, but to walk with you through it until the flames can no longer touch you. Some of you are standing on the edge of a breakthrough, but you're too busy trying to fix the situation yourself. You're still texting the people who left you, still chasing the doors God already closed, still trusting the job more than you trust the provider. But the voice of God is calling out to you today. I will do more in one moment than you could do in a lifetime. God doesn't need more of your effort. He needs more of your trust. Stop negotiating with fear and start declaring your faith. Stop analyzing the problem and start magnifying your God. If the burden has become unbearable, it's because it was never meant to be carried by you alone. You've been walking in your own wisdom, but now it's time to fall on your knees and cry out, God, take over this situation. Take over my pain. Take over my decisions. Take over my life. Let me tell you something bold and true. What you see as a crisis, God sees as a construction site. He is building something eternal in the middle of your pain. Every delay is God's divine redirection. Every no is a yes to something higher. Every heartbreak is a holy breaking that leads to your breakthrough. But this cannot happen until you stop trying to be the hero of your own story and let God be God over your situation. You cannot hear God clearly when your mind is full of panic. You cannot see God's way when you're blinded by your own plans. There must come a moment when you lay it all down and say, Even if I lose everything, as long as I have God, I have more than enough. That kind of surrender shakes the gates of hell. That kind of surrender moves the heart of God. It doesn't matter how far you've fallen, how long you've waited, or how impossible it seems. If God can part the sea, He can part the situation that's blocking your destiny. If God can bring water from a rock, He can bring a miracle out of your mess. If God can raise the sun every morning, He can raise your hope from the dead. The question is not, can God? The question is, will you let Him? Some of you are facing things right now that are bigger than your understanding. The doctor gave you a report that shook your spirit. Your family is falling apart. Your finances are in a free fall. The people you trusted turned their backs, and in the middle of it the voice of doubt screams, "Where is God?" But let me tell you, God never left. He's waiting for you to drop your pride, waiting for you to stop trying to be strong, waiting for you to say, "God, I trust you more than I trust what I see." God does not need your timeline. He does not move according to your calendar. He does not obey the rules of this world. When God takes over, time bends to His will. Natural laws bow to His command. What was delayed is suddenly accelerated. What was dead is suddenly alive. What was broken is suddenly whole. But you must make room for Him. You must clear out the fear, the control, the doubt, the resentment, and let God move. Let God be the voice that leads your next step. Let God be the peace that anchors your soul. Let God be the strength in your weakness, the wisdom in your confusion, the calm in your storm. Let God take over your situation, and you will discover a level of freedom, power, and victory that no human hand can provide. And you may not understand the path you're walking, but God never asked you to understand. He asked you to trust. You may not feel strong enough to face what's ahead, but God never asked you to be strong. He asked you to rest in His strength. You may not know the answer, but God is not asking you to solve it. He is asking you to believe that He already has. When God takes over your situation, He doesn't just fix the surface. He transforms the root. He doesn't just remove the storm. He teaches you to sleep through it. He doesn't just take away the pain. He turns it into purpose. But the key is surrender, not partial surrender, not temporary surrender. If you've tried everything else and nothing worked, maybe that's because God was never meant to be your last resort. He was meant to be your first response. If you're tired, that's a sign that it's time to let go. If you're anxious, it's because you're trying to control what only God can carry. If you're confused, it's because your eyes are on the problem instead of the promise keeper. God is calling you deeper, beyond the shallow waters of human solutions, beyond the quick fix answers, beyond the temporary distractions, into the deep waters of faith where you lose sight of the shore and trust that God will carry you into the place where peace makes no sense and joy defies circumstances. Into the place where miracles become your testimony because you had the courage to let go. Right now, this very moment, speak to your situation. Declare that it is no longer in your hands. It is in the hands of the one who holds the universe. Say to your fear, "You are no longer my master." Say to your past, "You are no longer my prison." Say to your burden, "You are no longer my identity." Let God take over and watch how your midnight turns to morning. How your pain becomes praise, how your waiting becomes witness to the faithfulness of God. Don't let another day go by trying to do what only God can do. Don't let another night steal your peace when the Prince of Peace is offering to carry your storm. You were not created to carry anxiety, fear, shame, or regret. You were created to trust God, to walk with God, to be carried by God. Let God take over, and you will finally breathe the air of true freedom. Not the kind of freedom the world promises through wealth or power, but the kind of freedom that sets your soul at rest. You see, there is a heavy burden that comes from self-dependence. There is a silent torment in trying to control what was never yours to control. But when you step aside and invite God to take the wheel, you shift from struggling to surrender, from panic to peace, from pressure to purpose. The most powerful moment in your life will not be when you achieve your dreams, but when you realize that God's plan is far greater than anything you ever dared to imagine. Everything changes. You've been standing at the edge for too long, asking questions that echo with no answers. Why isn't it working? Why is nothing changing? Why does it feel like I'm walking in circles? But maybe the answer is not found in another strategy. Maybe the answer is in a sacred silence that says, God, I give it all to you. When God takes over, confusion turns into clarity. The fog lifts. The pieces that once didn't make sense begin to form a pattern, and you realize that all along, God was writing a masterpiece. You just couldn't see it because your hands were covering the canvas. Some of you have mistaken motion for progress. You've been busy making calls, sending messages, moving from one place to another, yet you remain stuck. Because human effort without divine guidance is like rowing a boat against the wind. You're exhausting yourself, but going nowhere. But when God steps in, He speaks to the winds, and they obey. He calms the sea without a struggle. The same circumstances remain, but the power behind them shifts, and you will know without a doubt this is not your doing. This is the hand of God moving in power. Let God take over your emotions, and you will find that peace is not a destination. It's a presence. You've tried to suppress the pain, to hide the tears, to pretend you're fine. But God doesn't ask you to be perfect. He asks you to be honest. When you bring your brokenness before Him, you don't meet condemnation. You meet compassion. And that compassion is not weakness. It is the purest strength. God knows what you carry. He sees the silent battles, the hidden fears, the things you've never told anyone. And still, He waits not to judge you, but to heal you. But healing can only begin when you release the grip you have on your suffering and hand it over to the only one who can restore your soul. You've been living under pressure to perform, to prove yourself, to be strong when you're falling apart. But God never called you to be impressive. He called you to be obedient. Let God take over your ambition. Let Him redirect your steps, reshape your desires, and refine your motives. Because not everything that glitters is divine. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Sometimes the very thing you're chasing is the distraction that's keeping you from your destiny. But when you let God lead, He will close the wrong doors, no matter how beautiful they look. He will shut the trap, even if it comes wrapped in charm. And He will always steer you away from destruction, even if it means disappointing your expectations. God is not a backup plan. He is the architect of all things. The world may call it a coincidence, but when you walk with God, you know it's His orchestration. Every delay has divine intention. Every detour holds a lesson. Every closed door is a redirection to something higher. So stop asking, why is this happening? And start declaring God is in control. That one declaration will change the atmosphere around you. It will shift your posture in from defeat to confidence, not in yourself, but in the power of God to complete what He started in you. When you let God take over, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop living in emotional chaos and start moving in spiritual rhythm. God doesn't rush. He establishes. He doesn't panic. He plants. And when he steps into your situation, things begin to align without force. People begin to shift, not because you manipulated them, but because God moved them. Resources find you. Help arrives on time. Answers come not from your begging, but from your believing. You must come to a place where you can say, even if I don't understand it now, I trust that God is working something far greater than what I can see. That kind of faith unlocks doors that logic can't open. That kind of surrender invites miracles into mundane places. God doesn't need a stage to perform wonders. He often does his greatest work in the quiet, in the unnoticed corners of your life, where no one else is watching, just you and him. There is a sacred power in surrender. The world tells you to fight harder, to push through, to never let go. But God tells you, let go so I can step in. There is no shame in surrendering to God. There is strength, there is boldness, there is wisdom in knowing that the one who made the stars is more qualified to direct your path than any voice of fear or reason. And when you let God take over, you don't become weak, you become unstoppable. Because it's no longer your limited mind guiding the way. It's the limitless wisdom of God leading you. You may have made mistakes, you may have taken wrong turns, but God's mercy is not limited by your failures. His plan doesn't crumble because of your detours. In fact, sometimes your lowest point becomes your launch point if you place it in God's hands. Don't let guilt keep you from the greatness God still has in store for you. Don't let the past dictate your permission to receive his power. The situation may be messy, but in God's hands, mess becomes meaning. This is not about religion. This is not about rituals. This is about a real, raw, relentless relationship between a soul that is ready to surrender and a God who is always ready to respond. Let God take over your relationships. Stop begging people to stay who were never assigned to your destiny. Stop trusting the opinions of those who don't carry the vision God gave you. When God takes over your relationships, he removes the counterfeit and brings the covenant. He cuts away the distractions and plants divine connections. Let God take over your thoughts. The mind is a battlefield, and many are losing the war in silence. Anxiety is not your identity. Fear is not your future. Doubt is not your destiny. When you invite God into your thoughts, he replaces lies with truth, panic with purpose, and confusion with clarity. You will walk into situations that used to intimidate you and speak with a boldness that didn't come from self-confidence. It came from divine conviction. When God takes over, he does not just rearrange what's around you. He transforms what's within you. You begin to think differently, speak differently, walk differently, live differently. You stop trying to earn favor and start living from the favor you already have. You stop striving for validation and start walking in the power of divine approval. That kind of transformation only comes from complete surrender. So take your hands off the wheel. Put your plans, your fears, your future, your pain, put it all before God and say, this belongs to you now. And when you do, watch how peace replaces pressure, how faith replaces fear, how breakthroughs replace breakdowns. It doesn't matter how dark it looks. God specializes in impossible situations. The deeper the pit, the greater the glory. When he lifts you out. This is the moment to stop pretending you have it all together. This is the moment to stop acting like you're not afraid. Be honest. Be raw. Be real. God can handle your questions, your anger, your silence, your tears. But what he's waiting for is your surrender. Not because he needs your permission to be God, but because he desires your trust. So he can show you who He truly is. Let God take over, not just a piece of your life, all of it. Not just the pain, but also the pride. Not just the struggle, but also the success. Not just the tears, but also the triumph. Because when God takes over, fully, completely, absolutely, then and only then will you walk in the fullness of everything He created you to be. Let God take over. Because no matter how strong you think you are, there will come a point when human strength collapses under spiritual pressure. There will come a day when intellect won't be enough, when experience fails you, when resources run out, and when every plan you design begins to fall apart in your hands. And it is in that sacred breaking point that you will finally hear the whisper that has been calling you all along. Let me in. Let me take over. Not because God desires control, but because He knows how dangerous it is when your destiny is driven by fear instead of faith. Too often people wait until the pain is unbearable to call upon God. They wait until the storm has nearly destroyed the ship before crying out for rescue. But the wise know God is not the last resort. He is the first foundation. When you build on your own knowledge, the winds will test you. When you build on your own desires, disappointment will shake you. But when you build on the power and wisdom of God, no storm can bring you down. The foundation holds not because of your efforts, but because of God's eternal strength. Surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. It takes strength to recognize that the weight of your world is safer in the hands of the one who created it. Let God take over the questions that keep you awake at night. The what-ifs, the why-nots, the when will it happen. You were not created to be tormented by timelines or paralyzed by uncertainty. You were created to walk in trust. And trust doesn't demand explanation. It rests in assurance. When God speaks peace into your heart, that peace will defy every piece of evidence against it. There's a difference between surviving and living. Some are merely existing, counting days, dragging their feet, breathing but not alive. But when God takes over, the breath in your lungs becomes purpose in your bones. You don't just wake up, you rise up. You don't just face another day. You walk into it with divine confidence, knowing that wherever you go, God goes before you. That is the life of a person who has given full authority to God. No matter what comes, they remain unshaken, not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. And when God takes over your perspective, even pain looks different. You stop asking, why am I going through this, and start declaring, God is doing something in this. The fire no longer feels like punishment. It feels like preparation. The waiting no longer feels like denial. It feels like development. You stop cursing the silence and start honoring it, because you know God often works the most when He seems the quietest. That is the maturity of surrender. When your faith is not shaken by what you see, but strengthened by who you know God to be. Let God take over your words. Words have the power to build or destroy, and too many lives are trapped under the weight of careless speech. But when God takes control of your tongue, your mouth no longer speaks doubt. It declares destiny. Your voice no longer echoes fear. It proclaims freedom. When your words align with God's will, mountains move and strongholds break. Not because of your power, but because you gave God the space to speak through you. Let God take over your decisions. Every day you are faced with choices that will shape your future. But not every open door is a divine one. Not every opportunity is a calling. And not every invitation is from God. It takes discernment to know when to step, and when to stay still. But when God governs your choices, He will lead you away from what looks good and guide you toward what is truly good. You'll find yourself turning down the easy route because you've learned to wait for the ordained path. And though the road may be narrow and steep, you will walk it with unwavering assurance because God is the one directing your steps. God doesn't just want to rescue you. He wants to rewire you. He wants to strip away every dependency that's draining your spirit and rebuild your foundation on trust that cannot be moved. You will never rise above the limits of your trust in God. The deeper your surrender, the higher your potential. The more you decrease in self-dependence, the more God increases in authority over your life. And when God reigns, nothing stays the same. The ordinary becomes supernatural. The broken becomes blessed. The closed becomes open. Some of you are in a spiritual wilderness. You feel like everything around you is dry, silent, and lifeless. But wilderness is not abandonment. It is alignment. God allows the wilderness to remove every false support so that you may know who your true source is. The silence isn't proof of absence. It's the preparation for an outpouring. And when you surrender your situation in the wilderness, God will cause rivers to burst forth in the desert. He will make the barren fruitful. He will speak life into places you gave up on. Let God take over your past. The enemy loves to chain you to what happened, to your mistakes, to your regrets, to your shame. But when God takes over, the chains shatter. He will not rewrite the past, but He will redeem it. He will use every wrong turn to direct you toward your calling. What once looked like failure becomes the soil of your testimony. The same place where you once cried becomes the place where others come to be comforted through you. That is what happens when God takes over. Not just your situation, but your story. Let God take over your identity. You are not what they said about you. You are not the labels, the accusations, or the limitations spoken over your life. You are who God declares you to be. And until you surrender the lies you believed about yourself, you cannot step into the truth God has spoken over you. You are not a mistake. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not defeated. You are chosen, strengthened, and sustained by God through God. And when God takes over, He doesn't just change what happens to you. He changes how you carry it. You walk through fire and don't smell like smoke. You endure loss and still overflow with gratitude. You face pressure and still pour out peace. That is the evidence of surrender. Not that your life is easy, but that your life is empowered. Not that the storms stop, but that they no longer stop you. Let God take over the timing. Stop trying to rush what only grows in stillness. Stop trying to control what only God can cultivate. There is a time to sow and a time to reap, but both require trust. When God holds the clock, you stop watching minutes and start watching miracles. You stop obsessing over deadlines and start walking in divine timing, knowing that what is meant for you will arrive when you're ready, not when you're anxious. This is the invitation. Not to live a life without trouble, but to live a life where trouble cannot steal your trust. Not to avoid the fire, but to walk through it with a faith that cannot be shaken. Let God take over your situation, not just in theory, not just in language, but in reality. Surrender with your actions, with your habits, with your mindset, with your decisions. Let your life declare, I trust God more than I trust my own understanding. And when you do, when that surrender is real, everything changes. Not all at once, not always visibly, but deep within, a shift takes place, and what once terrified you now trains you. What once discouraged you now deepens you. And what once looked like the end becomes the very beginning of everything God had planned all along. Let God take over. Not someday now, not partly, completely, not in words only, but with your whole life. Let God take over your expectations. So many people live disappointed not because God failed them, but because they built expectations around their own timing, their own desires, and their own limited understanding. But the truth is, your expectations must bow to God's revelation. You may have wanted it to happen last year. You may have imagined it looking a certain way. But God is not confined to your plans. He exceeds them. He goes beyond what you ask for, above what you thought possible, and delivers not just what is good, but what is right. When you let God take over, you don't just wait. You wait with assurance, because you know what is coming is designed by the one who cannot fail. God, take over your silence. You may feel like you've cried out and heard nothing in return, like your prayers have hit the ceiling and fallen back in pieces. But God does not ignore the cry of the sincere heart. Silence is not absence. It is the sacred space where God teaches you to depend, not on signs, but on stillness. In that quiet, God is planting strength you didn't even know you needed. He is preparing you for what you cannot yet handle. You think you're waiting on Him, but in truth He's preparing the blessing to meet you in maturity. Let God use the silence to sharpen your hearing. Let Him use the delay to deepen your roots. Let God take over the way you respond to adversity. There is a temptation to strike back when wronged, to defend yourself when misunderstood, to control the outcome when things seem unfair. But when you truly let God take over, you no longer act out of emotion. You respond from a place of divine restraint. You begin to understand that God will vindicate, God will reveal, God will lift up what others tried to tear down. And in time, those who doubted you will have no choice but to witness the undeniable evidence of God's hand over your life. You won't have to speak a word. God's work will do the talking. Let God take over your definition of success. The world teaches you that success is measured by numbers, fame, recognition, and wealth. But when God defines your success, He uses a different scale. In the eyes of the world, you may look like a nobody. But in the eyes of God, your obedience makes you unstoppable. When God takes over, the applause of people no longer feeds your identity. You no longer hustle for validation because your worth is no longer up for debate. You walk into rooms without fear, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you are already approved by the one who sent you. Let God take over your battles. Stop fighting wars in your own strength. Stop responding to every insult, every betrayal, every attack. Some battles are not yours to fight. They are God's. He is your defender. He sees what you cannot, hears what you do not, and strikes when you least expect it. When you step back and let God take the battlefield, you will see victories without lifting a hand. You will see people removed, plots exposed, traps dismantled, not by your cleverness, but by God's precision. The most powerful move you can make in a battle is to step aside and let God have full command. Let God take over your mornings. The first moments of your day determine the posture of your heart. Don't let the first thing you reach for be your phone. Let it be your focus on God. When you give God your mornings, you are not just starting your day. You are inviting divine alignment. You are declaring that no matter what news comes, no matter what pressure arises, you are And that anchoring doesn't come from motivational speeches or fleeting emotions. It comes from the steadfast presence of the one who holds the entire day in his hands. Let God take over the hidden places, the ones no one sees, the secret fears, the quiet insecurities, the private sins. You can fool others. You can even lie to yourself. But you cannot hide from God. And the beauty of surrender is that when you stop pretending, God starts healing. When you drop the mask, God begins the makeover. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. He reshapes your heart, rewrites your motives, and reawakens the purpose that pain buried. Don't fear the exposure. God does not uncover to shame. He uncovers to restore. Let God take over your parenting, your leadership, your decisions. Because even in roles of influence, you are not the ultimate source. You are a vessel, a steward, a temporary carrier of something far greater than yourself. And when you try to lead without God, you will burn out. You will break under the pressure. But when you allow God to lead through you, wisdom flows. Strength multiplies. Patience grows. You speak less and accomplish more. Not because you've become better, but because God has taken full control. Let God take over your dreams. Yes, the ones that feel delayed, impossible, or dead. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean God has forgotten. Time is not a threat to God's plan. It's a tool in his hand. You may be walking through years of waiting, but those years are not wasted. When God takes over, he does more in a moment than you could do in a lifetime. That dream buried in your heart, it's not over. It's just being refined. And when the time is right, it will rise from the ashes, stronger than before, and soaked in the glory of God's fingerprint. Let God take over your habits. You cannot carry divine power and remain enslaved to destructive patterns. There are things you must release in order to rise. There are comforts you must confront and cycles you must surrender. God cannot fill what is already full of compromise. You must make room. Let him clean out what's contaminating your spirit. Let him remove the things you've grown attached to, the things you've called normal, but that have been slowly stealing your spiritual authority. When God takes over your habits, transformation becomes visible. You begin to glow with clarity, discipline, and fire. Let God take over your fears. Fear is a liar dressed in logic. It convinces you to stay where it's safe, to avoid the unknown, to build walls instead of faith. But fear is no match for the one who split seas and raised nations from nothing. When you let God take over, fear doesn't vanish instantly, but it loses its power. You begin to walk in boldness, not because you have no fear, but because you've given it no authority. God becomes your courage. God becomes your light. And every step you take becomes a testimony that trust in him silences every lie of the enemy. Let God take over your time. So much is wasted on distractions, entertainment, comparison, and chasing what has no eternal value. But when God takes over your time, every moment becomes sacred. You begin to discern what matters. You stop rushing. You stop running. You stop living with intention. And your time, once filled with clutter, now becomes a garden where peace, clarity, and purpose begin to grow. Time submitted to God is never lost. It's multiplied, stretched, blessed, and used to shape the very character he desires to cultivate within you. Let God take over your legacy. What you leave behind is not measured in possessions, but in the impact of your obedience. A life surrendered to God becomes a ripple that spreads through generations, Children rise with stronger faith. Communities shift because one life chose to be fully led by God. You may never see the full fruit of your surrender, but rest assured, every seed planted in faith will rise in season. What you do in obedience today creates breakthroughs for those you may never meet. Let God take over, not because it sounds good in a moment of desperation, but because it is the only way to truly live. You were not created to carry the weight of the world. You were created to be carried by the one who made it. God doesn't just want to walk beside you. He wants to take the lead. He wants to step into your chaos, your confusion, your uncertainty, and bring order, clarity, and strength. Not just for today, but for every step forward. Let go of the illusion of control and take hold of the only truth that can never be shaken. When God takes over, victory is no longer a hope. Let God take over, because your life was never meant to operate on human wisdom alone. What you can figure out with your mind is limited, but what God can unfold in your life is infinite. There is a dimension of breakthrough that can only be accessed when logic is silenced and surrender speaks louder than your thoughts. As long as you are leaning on your own understanding, you are cutting. You're cutting yourself off from divine revelation. You're trusting a flashlight when God is offering you the sun. Human intellect can guide you for a moment, but only the wisdom of God can establish your destiny for eternity. There are moments when you think the delay is punishment, but God is actually protecting you. He sees what is ahead. He hears conversations you don't. He knows intentions that have never been spoken. So when God closes a door, don't kick it down. Thank Him. When God removes someone from your life, don't chase them. Praise Him. When the opportunity slips through your fingers, don't collapse in sorrow. Stand still and say, God, I trust your plan more than I trust my own desire. That level of surrender will separate you from the world and align you with the flow of divine favor. Let God take over your reputation. Too many are bound by the need to be understood, to be liked, to be approved by people who didn't call them, who didn't create them, and who don't hold their future. Stop defending yourself before people when God is already defending you in places you cannot see. There is a power that comes when you no longer need validation from voices that have no authority over your purpose. The only approval that matters comes from God, and when you fully surrender to Him, you stop living for applause. You live for alignment. Let God take over your nights, the hours when the world goes quiet and your thoughts become the loudest, the moments when anxiety creeps in and regret keeps you awake. God doesn't sleep, and He doesn't want you tormented through the night. When you place your life in His hands, even your rest becomes protected. Your mind begins to settle. Your heart begins to slow, because the one who created the stars is also holding your tomorrow. There is a deep calm that descends on the soul when it knows that God, not fear, is the one in charge. Let God take over your health. When your body is weary and the doctors have said all they can say, there is still another report. The report of God, the one who formed every cell, who breathes life into every organ, who designed your body before you were even aware of yourself. No sickness is too great, no diagnosis too final, no condition too complex for God to reverse. Healing doesn't always come how or when you expect it. But when you let God take over, you place your trust not in the hands of man, but in the hands of the healer. Whether through process or miracle, strength or stillness, He will sustain you. Let God take over your endurance. Life isn't a sprint, it's a long, sometimes rugged journey. There will be seasons when you are tempted to give up, when the weight is too much, when Everything in you screams for relief. But when God takes over, He doesn't remove the mountain. He equips your feet to climb it. He puts strength in your steps. He gives you breath in dry places. And when others fade, you will still be standing. Not because you had more energy, but because you had more surrender. The power of endurance flows from the God who never gets tired, never grows weary, and never leaves you without help. Let God take over your expectations of people. Not everyone will treat you right. Not everyone will honor your value. And if you put your worth in their hands, you will ride a roller coaster of emotional highs and lows. But when your worth is rooted in God, you can love people without needing anything in return. You can serve without resentment. You can forgive without bitterness. Because your reward doesn't come from them. It comes from God. And He never forgets your sacrifice, your effort, or your obedience. Let God take over your silence. There are seasons when the voice of God feels distant, when prayers feel unanswered, when direction is unclear. But it's in those moments that God teaches you to hear in stillness, to trust without signs, to believe without proof. God is always speaking, but sometimes His loudest voice is through peace, through the absence of noise, through the quiet conviction that even though you cannot see it, something holy is happening beneath the surface. Don't mistake God's silence for inactivity. Often He works the most in the places you feel the least. Let God take over your influence. It is easy to chase visibility, to strive for recognition, to want your voice to be heard. But influence that is not God-given will destroy you before it blesses you. When God exalts, it comes with endurance. When God promotes, it comes with protection. Stop trying to build a platform with your own hands. Let God build the foundation, and the reach will take care of itself. What He ordains, no one can block. What He opens, no one can shut. And when your motives are purified by surrender, your impact will stretch farther than you ever imagined, because it will be God who breathes on it. Let God take over your finances. Money can become a tyrant when it's pursued without purpose. But when placed under the authority of God, resources multiply, not only in amount, but in impact. He provides, but He also instructs. He opens doors, but He also teaches discipline. He grants abundance, but He also demands stewardship. When God takes over your finances, you are no longer ruled by scarcity or greed. You give generously, live wisely, and walk in supernatural provision. Not because of luck or strategy, but because of divine order. Let God take over your generational patterns. The cycles that have repeated through your bloodline in fear, addiction, poverty, dysfunction can be broken when you surrender them to God. You are not bound to repeat what came before you. God can interrupt the flow of generational dysfunction and birth a new lineage through your obedience. You may be the first to fully trust God in your family, the first to break away from toxic habits, the first to raise your children in wisdom. And when God takes over, your life becomes the turning point, not just for you, but for generations to come. Let God take over your final word. There are things people have spoken over you that you must no longer accept. Words of limitation, words of doubt, labels of failure. Let God be the only voice that defines your identity. When He speaks, every lie must fall silent. His word is not a suggestion. It is truth. And when God takes over, His truth becomes your shield, your compass, your foundation. What others said no longer controls you because you are anchored in what God has declared. Let God take over, not just when things fall apart, but even when things are going well. Sometimes success can be more dangerous than struggle. In moments of victory, pride can creep in. Self-sufficiency can mask dependence. But a life that truly belongs to God gives Him glory, not only in need, but also in abundance. You praise not just when the battle is won, but even while you're climbing the hill. You seek not just when you're broken, but even when you're whole, because you understand that the breath in your lungs, the strength in your bones, the clarity in your mind is all sustained by God. Let God take over completely. There is no halfway with true surrender. It's all or nothing. And when you finally lay it all down, your fears, your hopes, your plans, your pride, you will find that what God gives in return is far greater than anything you were trying to hold on to. He will give you peace that can't be shaken, strength that can't be stolen, joy that can't be explained, direction that can't be confused, and a life that no man, no circumstance, no enemy can ever destroy. And because it is held firmly in the hands of God, there comes a moment in every life, every soul, when the weight of worry presses down like a storm on the sea. You lie awake at night, staring into the shadows, your heart heavy, your mind spinning, thinking, how will I get through this? You smile in public, but you're trembling inside. You pretend everything's fine, but your spirit is exhausted. You try to fix it, try to plan, try to control every outcome. But the more you try, the worse it gets. I came to tell you something that can change your life. Something that can deliver peace where there is only pressure, joy where there is only pain, strength where there is only struggle. The secret is this: give it to God and stop worrying. That's not weak surrender. That's not spiritual laziness. That is the path of true power, the road to peace, the gateway to clarity and restoration. When you give it to God, you are not giving up. You are rising up. You are trading your fragile hands for the hands that never fail. You are taking your burden and laying it at the feet of the one who commands the wind, who parts the seas, who holds the world in place without breaking a sweat. When you truly give it to God, you are declaring, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe you can do what I cannot. I surrender not out of fear, but out of faith. Hurry has become the silent epidemic of our generation. People are drowning in anxiety, suffocating in silence, worn down by thoughts of what could go wrong. They're addicted to the idea of control, as if they can somehow fix every broken piece through effort alone. But the truth is, worry is a thief. It steals your time. It steals your focus. It steals your worship. It takes your energy and drains it into fears that often never even come true. God did not design your heart to carry the whole world. God designed your heart to trust Him. What if I told you that the very situation you're trying to fix is the one God is using to teach you to let go? What if the delay is not denial but divine discipline? What if your worry is the wall that's blocking your breakthrough? You can't move forward if your hands are full of fear. You can't walk in the path God has laid before you. If your mind is constantly running in circles, you must make the choice. Will I try to manage everything, or will I give everything to God? God is not a last resort. God is not a backup plan. God is not waiting for you to reach your limit so he can step in. God is waiting for you to choose him from the start. Give it to him before it breaks you. Give it to him before it drowns you. Don't wait until you're shattered and gasping. God is ready now, right now, in this very moment. God is listening. The secret is not in finding a new strategy, a new resource, or a new escape plan. The secret is surrender. Not the kind of surrender that leaves you powerless, but the kind that makes you unstoppable because God is now fighting your battles. Some people say, if I don't worry, I'll lose control. My friend, you were never in control. That's the illusion. You were managing details, trying to predict outcomes, obsessing over what ifs, but the future has never been in your hands. God holds tomorrow. God shapes destinies. God moves mountains in silence. You are not supposed to carry the crushing weight of what's next. You are supposed to walk in faith, trusting that God sees what you cannot, and God never sleeps. God never stumbles. God never needs a backup plan. Let me ask you, has worry ever solved anything for you? Has stress ever opened a door? Has anxiety ever healed a wound? The answer is no. All worry does is drain you, distract you, and distance you from the peace God has already prepared for you. It is wisdom. The wisest thing you can do in the face of uncertainty is to say, God, I give this to you. You know what I do not. You can go where I cannot. You are already there before I arrive. You may be facing a crisis right now. You may be in the middle of financial ruin, family tension, health concerns, or emotional turmoil. You may be watching everything you built slowly fall apart. But here is the promise. If you give it to God, what falls apart in your life will fall into place in his hands. God is not intimidated by the size of your storm. God is not overwhelmed by the depth of your despair. You are not too broken. Your situation is not too far gone. When you stop worrying and start trusting, you will see the hand of God move in ways you never imagined. You cannot hold on to worry and hold on to faith at the same time. One must go. When your heart is full of fear, faith has no room to grow. But when you release fear, when you push worry out of the way, you make space for God to move. You make space for miracles. You make space for wisdom. You make space for divine timing. You're not running out of time. God is aligning time in your favor when you trust him. The secret is not in the hustle, not in the plan, not in the stress. The secret is in the release to give it to God in prayer. Not a shallow, rushed prayer, but a deep and honest cry from your soul. Tell God what you're afraid of. Tell God what keeps you up at night. Tell God what you've been trying to fix alone. Pour it all out. Empty yourself of the burden so that God can fill you with strength. God listens. God responds. God is not far. God is closer than your next breath. God is not waiting for perfect words. God is waiting for a sincere heart. And once you give it to God, leave it there. Don't snatch it back tomorrow. Don't pray and then go right back to panic. Leave it in God's hands and live as if it's already handled. That's faith. That's the key. Too many people pray but don't trust. They give it to God and then live like nothing changed. But when you really trust God, your actions match your prayers. Your spirit finds rest. Your mind slows down. Your steps become steady. You walk like you know God is in control. The secret to peace is not in perfect conditions. It is in perfect surrender. You can have chaos around you and still be calm within you if you've given it to God. You can walk through fire and not be burned if you know God walks with you. You can face enemies and not be shaken if you know God is your defender. You don't need every answer. You need the one who holds the answers. You don't need to figure it all out. You need to trust the one who already has. And here is the powerful truth. God honors trust. When you give it to God, you're not just handing over your pain. You are planting a seed of faith, and faith grows. Faith produces fruit. Faith attracts favor. God does not overlook the one who trusts him. When you lay down your worry, God lifts up your future. When you choose peace over panic, God sends provision that no man can block. There are doors waiting to open the moment you stop doubting. There are blessings stored up for the one who says, God, I don't know how, but I know you do. Your worry is lying to you. It's telling you the worst case scenario. It's telling you that you're alone. It's telling you that nothing will change. But worry is not a prophet. God is. Worry doesn't know the future. God does. And God's plans are never for destruction. Even in pain, even in loss, even in delay, God is still working for your good. Don't confuse silence for absence. God is never absent. God is never absent. God is never absent. God is never. You've tried everything else. Why not try surrender? You've strategized, calculated, panicked, vented, Googled, and cried. Now it's time to let go, not just once, but daily. Give it to God each morning. Give it to God each night. When the thoughts rush in, hand them back. When the fears whisper, answer with faith. When the doubts knock, open the door with confidence in God. This is a lifestyle, not a one-time act. The secret is not in doing more. The secret is in trusting more. And when you finally release it, when you finally stop worrying, you will notice something begin to shift. Your sleep will return. Your joy will increase. Your relationships will improve. Your steps will quicken. Why? Because God is now carrying what was crushing you. God is navigating what you couldn't understand. God is solving what you didn't even know was a problem. The invisible hand of God is doing visible things. And all because you made the decision to give it to him. There's a difference between believing in God and trusting God. Many believe, few trust. Trust is deeper. Trust says, even if I don't see it yet, I know you're working. Trust says, even if it's taking longer than I thought, I still won't worry. Trust says, even if I feel afraid, I won't act out of fear. I will act out of faith. That kind of trust moves heaven. That kind of trust unleashes blessing. That kind of trust silences the voice of fear and invites the voice of God. Hear this. You must understand your peace is not determined by the absence of problems, but by the presence of trust. Trust in God is not passive. It is a living, breathing, powerful act of spiritual defiance against fear, doubt, and confusion. It is to stand firm when everything around you is shaking. It is to say, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow. And when you reach that place where your soul anchors itself in God, you will begin to walk through storms without drowning. You will begin to carry burdens without being crushed. You will begin to live above the noise of life because your ears are tuned to a higher voice, the voice of God. Worry is not just a habit, it's a spiritual battle. Every time your thoughts spiral into anxiety, you are stepping into a battlefield of the unseen. But you are not unarmed. You have the weapon of surrender. You have the shield of faith. And above all, you have access to the one who speaks and chaos bows. God is not limited by time, resources, or human ability. What seems impossible for you is a whisper for God. What feels like the end for you is the beginning of something divine in His hands. But it all begins when you say, God, I release this. I will not hold what you have called me to hand over. It is not your job to control everything. It is your calling to trust. The one who can control is an illusion. You can't control other people's choices. You can't control the timing of outcomes. You can't control the seasons of life. But you can choose to trust God in every circumstance. And that choice unlocks power. That choice releases peace. That choice transforms chaos into calm. When you let go of what you can't control, you make room for God to show you what He's had planned all along. Some of you are weighed down because you're still holding on to things God told you to release a long time ago. You're holding on to old pain, old regrets, old failures, toxic relationships, financial fear, uncertain futures. And every day you carry it, you rob yourself of the joy that God is trying to pour into your life. When you clutch tightly to your own understanding, you block the very blessing you're praying for. Let go. Let it fall. If it is meant for your life, God will restore it. If it is not, God will replace it. Either way you win when you trust Him. Bendik lives within us. That is a short. And don't think that surrender means doing nothing. Surrender means doing the right thing. Trusting God while you walk in obedience. You do your part and you leave the rest in God's hands. You stay faithful, stay honest, stay prayerful, stay pure in heart, and God takes care of the outcome. You don't have to manipulate the process. You don't have to bend your integrity to make things happen. God honors those who walk uprightly, those who choose trust over tricks, faith over shortcuts, patience over panic. God is not watching your situation in confusion. God is not pacing the floor of heaven trying to figure out how to help you. God already has a plan, a perfect one. But He waits for you to stop grabbing the wheel so He can drive the vehicle of your destiny. You're not meant to carry the stress of every outcome. You're meant to walk each step in faith and let God be the author of your results. There is no peace in the place of control. There is only peace in the presence of surrender. And listen, this is not a one-time decision. This is a daily discipline. You must wake up every morning and say, today I will not be ruled by worry. Today I give it to God. And every time worry tries to creep in, say it again. Speak it out loud if you must. Declare it with your whole being. Because fear has a voice, but so does faith. You can choose which one gets the microphone in your mind. You can choose which one shapes your actions. The world may shake, but your spirit doesn't have to, because you placed your trust in the unshakable. Some of you are carrying the burden of waiting. You've prayed, but you haven't seen the answer. You've hoped, but the breakthrough hasn't come. Let me remind you, delay is not defeat. God is not ignoring you. God is developing you. What you call a delay, God calls preparation. What you see as stagnation, God sees as growth. Don't let worry fill the gap between prayer and promise. Let faith fill that space. Let peace be your companion while you wait. Give your timetable to God and trust that His timing is perfect even when it feels late. There are blessings that only come when you stop striving and start resting in God's power. Resting does not mean doing nothing. It means trusting while you keep walking forward. It means you don't panic when doors close. It means you don't give up when the path gets hard. You know God is still guiding you, still providing for you, still working all things together for your benefit. Even the things you don't understand, especially those things. When you stop worrying, you create an atmosphere where miracles can grow. You silence the noise that drowns out God's guidance. Worry speaks in the voice of what if. Faith speaks in the voice of even if. Even if it gets worse before it gets better, I will not fear. Even if I don't see the full picture, I will trust the one who does. Even if I face giants, I will walk forward, knowing that God never sends me into a battle without a victory in mind. You are not alone. Even now, God is surrounding you. You may feel unseen, unheard, forgotten, but that is a lie. God has never taken his eyes off you. God is not distant. He is present in your tears. He is close in your silence. He listens in your weariness. He carries you. If you would only stop gripping that worry so tightly, you would feel the gentle strength of his presence lifting you, steadying you, holding you together when everything around you is falling apart. There is a freedom that comes when you give it to God. A holy freedom, a sacred release. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You no longer live in fear of what might go wrong because your faith is grounded in what will go right in God's way, in God's time, through God's power. You don't wait for peace to find you. You choose it by giving your cares to the one who never fails. Don't let the urgency of life push you into panic. Let it push you into prayer. Let it drive you deeper into dependence on God. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to surrender. Surrender your plans. Surrender your timelines. Surrender your need to be in control. And in that surrender, you will find strength that no struggle can shake. You will find wisdom that no worry can match. You will find peace that no pressure can steal. God is not just present in your victories. God is present in your valleys, in your quiet breakdowns, in your silent cries, in your desperate prayers. And God responds to the heart that lets go. God moves when you move out of the way. The more you release, the more he reveals. The more you trust, the more he transforms. Your breakthrough is not waiting on your performance. It's waiting on your surrender. Give it to God. All of it. Not just the big things. Not just the things you can't fix, but even the small daily thoughts that cause unrest. Hand them over. Let God carry what you were never created to hold. This is the secret that so many miss while they run in circles, trapped in cycles of stress, burden and fear. The secret that opens doors no man can shut. The secret that brings light into the darkest hour. The secret that carries you when you have no strength left to stand. Give it to God. Stop worrying and watch what happens when heaven responds to a heart fully surrendered. So many are weighed down by battles in the mind, internal storms, invisible wars that rage in silence. And while people around you see the surface, only God sees the struggle beneath. That war between faith and fear, between trust and doubt, between surrender and control. But I say this to you today with fire in my soul. The storm inside you will not subside until you finally say, God, I give you the whole thing. Not just the parts I don't like. Not just the things I cannot fix, but everything. My thoughts, my fears, my expectations, my outcomes, I give them to you fully and completely. It takes boldness to surrender. It takes courage to stop clinging. It takes faith to say, even though I don't understand, I will still trust. And that kind of faith is not found in noise, but in stillness. In that quiet place where your soul kneels before God and confesses, I can't carry this anymore, and I don't have to. Do you realize what kind of freedom that brings? When you truly come to the end of your own strength, that is when God's strength begins to manifest in power. That is when the fog begins to lift. That is when your eyes are opened and you begin to see, not from a place of panic, but from a position of power. Because worry limits your vision. It narrows your focus down to what's wrong, what's missing, what's delayed. But when you give it to God, your vision expands. You begin to see beyond the temporary. You begin to sense the divine orchestration behind the delays, the rejections, the closed doors. You begin to understand that what didn't happen for you was God's protection, that the people who walked away were God's redirection, that the failure wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. But you only see it when your mind is no longer clouded by fear and anxiety. When you lay it all at the feet of God, clarity begins to rise. And listen to this. God doesn't just take your burden, God transforms it. What was once your source of torment becomes your testimony. What was once your deepest pain becomes your greatest platform. But it cannot happen while your hands are closed, clutching the weight of worry. You must open your hands in full surrender. You must choose the higher road, the road where your spirit walks ahead of your emotions, the road where your decisions are no longer shaped by fear, but by faith in God's unchanging character. God is not moved by your panic. God is moved by your faith. The moment you shift from anxiety to assurance, you create a space for divine intervention, and that intervention may not always look the way you expect it. Sometimes the answer is not a quick fix. It's a transformation of your inner man. Sometimes God allows the storm to continue so that your roots grow deeper, so that your dependence is no longer on your ability, but fully anchored in God's sufficiency. The peace you're looking for is not around you, it's within you, and it begins with full release. Too many walk through life with clenched fists, fists full of control, of timelines, of expectations. But God responds to open palms and a surrendered heart. When you say, God, take this pain, take this pressure, take this need, take this future, you are saying, I trust you more than I trust myself. And when that kind of trust is released, the heavens respond. Not always with thunder, not always with signs, but with a stillness, a deep, unshakable stillness that becomes your anchor even when everything around you feels like it's spinning. And don't let the enemy of your soul convince you that giving it to God is giving up. Note, it's going up. It's rising higher. It's saying, I will not be reduced to fear. I will not be driven by anxiety. I will rise and I will rest in the power of the Almighty. There is a dignity in surrender. There is a majesty in humility before God. And when you empty yourself of worry, you are filled with a wisdom that comes not from books, not from experience, but from heaven itself. Some of you are carrying what was never yours to carry. You inherited fear. You absorbed anxiety. You learned to worry from people who didn't know how to trust. But today that cycle can be broken. God does not call you to carry generational burdens. God calls you to carry faith. God calls you to rise above the weight of yesterday and walk in the strength of divine trust. And you may say, but I've been hurt too many times. I've trusted before and been disappointed. I understand. But trusting in God is not the same as trusting in man. People may fail you. Life may shake you. But God does not fail. God does not abandon. God does not change. And here is a deep truth. Worry is worship pointed in the wrong direction. When you worry, you are placing more belief in the power of problems than in the power of God. But when you surrender, your worship returns to its rightful place. You begin to magnify God instead of magnifying your fear. You begin to exalt God above the problem. You begin to see the mountain move. And because your heart is no longer bound by what you see, but grounded in what you know, that God is able, that God is working, that God is present, even now. You don't need to beg God to care. God already does. You don't need to convince God to notice. God already sees. But what God waits for is your surrender, your voluntary trust, your decision to stop striving and start resting in His authority. God does not force His way in. He waits for an invitation. And the moment you say, God, I give this to you, you are opening the gates of heaven for divine strategy, divine alignment, and divine peace. This is not emotional hype. This is spiritual truth. You can choose peace over panic. You can choose trust over torment. You can choose rest over wrestling. But the choice begins with surrender. Not half-hearted, not partial, not temporary. Total surrender. Because anything less will still leave room for fear to creep in. And fear tolerated is faith contaminated. You cannot serve two masters. Worry and worship cannot coexist. One must leave. And when you choose to evict worry, worship becomes your constant atmosphere. And underestimate not the power of silence before God. Don't think that stillness is weakness. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be still and know that God is in control. No more frantic thoughts. No more desperate grasping. Just stillness. Just trust. Just the quiet strength of a soul anchored in divine sovereignty. In that stillness, you will hear what you could not hear through the noise. You will receive what you could not receive through striving. You will know what you could not know while you were trying to figure it out yourself. And when you begin to walk in that level of trust, you become unshakable. The winds may blow, the storms may come, but you are grounded not because of who you are, but because of who God is to you. You've handed it over, you've stepped aside, you've allowed God to take His rightful place, not as your assistant, not as your backup plan, but as the sovereign authority over your life. And in that moment the heavens align, the weight lifts, the confusion breaks, the path begins to clear. You must understand this. The more you try to hold everything together by your own will, the more life will remind you that you are not the author of your story. You are not the architect of your destiny. God is. And as long as you live as if everything depends on your effort, you will be trapped in a cycle of exhaustion. You will run faster, work harder, think longer, stress deeper, and still feel like you're falling short. That is not the life God designed for you. God did not create you to collapse under pressure. God created you to flourish under His care. But you cannot flourish if you refuse to trust. The roots of your peace are not planted in control. They are planted in surrender. And surrender is not something you feel. It's something you decide. You don't wait for the perfect moment to give it all to God. You create that moment by saying, enough. I will no longer be a prisoner to fear. I will no longer let anxiety write my story. Today I give every worry, every doubt, every burden to God. And once you do that, truly do it, you will feel the supernatural weight lift off your soul. You will know the kind of peace that cannot be explained, only experienced. That is the peace that comes when you are no longer leaning on your own understanding, but standing firm on the wisdom and mercy of God. The human heart is not designed to carry the pressure of tomorrow. That's why God gives you strength for today, not stress for the future. Yet we fill our minds with questions. What if this happens? What if that fails? What if I lose everything? But let me ask you this. What if you gave it to God? What if you stopped trying to control what only God can change? What if you shifted the weight off your shoulders and laid it at the feet of the one who already has the solution? That is not weakness, that is wisdom. Some people think trusting God means everything will be easy. But let me tell you, trusting God does not
mean the storm disappears.
It means the storm no longer has the power to sink you. The winds may still blow, the waves may still crash, but you will stand, not because of your strength, but because of your surrender. You will stand because you know that God is not distant in trouble. God is nearest when you need Him most. And when you stop focusing on the size of your problem and start focusing on the greatness of God, something inside of you shifts. Worry loses its grip. A panic loses its voice. Peace takes its place. Do not let the culture of this world dictate your spirit. We live in an age of endless noise. Everyone shouting, selling, stressing, rushing. But the soul was never meant to be led by noise. The soul is meant to be led by God. And God speaks clearest when we are quiet enough to listen. So shut the door on the chaos. Shut the door on the voices that say you'll never make it. Shut the door on the lies that tell you God has forgotten you. And listen deeply. Listen in stillness. Listen in faith. Because when you give it to God, He will begin to speak to you. Not always in thunder, but often in a whisper. And one word from God in silence can do more for you than 1,000 anxious thoughts ever could. There is a sacred rhythm to living a surrendered life. It is not passivity. It is powerful dependence. You get up each day and say, God, lead me. I do not know what the day holds, but I trust that you go before me. I trust that nothing I face today is outside of your awareness or beyond your control. That is the life that pleases God. That is the posture that invites peace. And when God sees that your heart is positioned in total trust, He begins to unlock things in your life that effort alone could never achieve. Doors open, clarity comes, provision arrives. Not because you chased them, but because you made space for them through surrender. You see, when you worry, you close your hands. But when you surrender, you open them. And only open hands can receive what God is ready to give. Too often, we are clenching so tightly to our fears, our plans, our logic, that there's no room left for divine provision. You're praying for peace, but your grip on the problem is so tight that peace has no place to land. Release it. Let it go. Hand it over to God with finality. Not as a temporary loan. Say, God, I trust you with the outcome no matter what it looks like. That level of trust does not come from a shallow relationship with God. It comes from knowing who God is. Knowing that God is merciful, just, wise, compassionate, and powerful. It comes from remembering how many times God has already come through for you. Think about it. How many times has God protected you from what you didn't even know was coming? How many times has God worked behind the scenes while you were crying in the dark? You're still here. You're still breathing. And that means God is not finished. God has more for you. But you must release the grip on your fears to step into what's next. Every time you take back the worry after you've given it to God, you are saying, I don't fully trust you yet. But when you leave it with God, you are saying, my confidence is in your sovereignty. My rest is in your presence. My peace is in your plan. That is where real strength is born. Not in striving, but in surrender. And when you live like that daily, consistently, fully, your spirit becomes immovable. Not because life is perfect, but because your trust in God is deeper than the storms you face. And let me speak directly to the one who feels like letting go is dangerous. You've been taught to control. You've been trained to manage every detail. You've survived by staying one step ahead. And now letting go feels like falling. But I tell you this in love. Letting go is not falling. It is flying. It is rising on wings of trust. It is allowing the power of God to carry you higher than your plans ever could. And once you experience that kind of surrender, you will never want to go back to carrying the weight alone. Let God be your anchor when the winds rise. Let God be your compass when the road is unclear. Let God be your protector when you feel vulnerable. Your provider when the resources run dry. Your guide when the next step is hidden. All of it begins with one powerful decision. I will not worry. I will give this to God. Not partially, not momentarily, but fully, unapologetically, trustingly. You don't need 1,000 solutions. You need one surrender. And once that surrender is real, once it becomes the foundation of your life, everything changes. The voices of doubt lose their volume. The temptation to control loses its grip. You become a different kind of person, calm in crisis, firm in faith, unshaken in the unknown, because your life is no longer built on your ability. It is built on your trust in God. That is the secret, and that is the invitation. Give it to God and stop worrying. Not because life will suddenly be easy, but because now you're no longer walking alone. You're walking with peace. You're walking with confidence. You're walking with a heart that knows God is in control. There are moments when your thoughts will rise like a flood, fast, overwhelming and relentless. Your heart will pound. Your chest will tighten. Your mind will rehearse the same scene over and over again. What if I fail? What if I lose it all? What if I never recover? And in those moments, the greatest battle is not external. It is internal. But hear this truth and let it strike deep into your spirit. Peace does not come when the problem disappears. Peace comes when you let go of the problem and place it entirely in the hands of God. God is not asking you to figure it all out. God is not expecting you to understand every twist and turn. God is asking you to trust fully, boldly, and without hesitation. The weight you're carrying is not a test of your strength. It's a call to trust in God's power. And the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. But the very second you release it, the atmosphere around you begins to shift. Why? Because God's presence responds to trust. Like fire responds to oxygen. It ignites, it spreads, it consumes fear and births peace. And understand this. Trusting God is not passive. It's not the absence of action. It's the presence of alignment. You move when God says move. You pause when God says wait. You speak when God prompts you. But what you no longer do is act out of fear. You no longer make decisions based on panic. You are no longer driven by the tyranny of what if, but by the confidence of even if. Even if it takes longer than expected, God is still working. Even if the outcome looks different than you imagined, God's plan is still better. Even if the path is not what you would have chosen, God's wisdom surpasses your understanding. You may feel like you're in the dark right now. You may feel surrounded by uncertainty, confusion, and questions that have no immediate answers. But know this, God often does His greatest work in the dark. Just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it's not happening. Seeds don't grow in the sunlight alone. They grow in the soil, hidden from sight, nurtured in stillness. Likewise, your faith grows strongest when you give your situation to God and resist the urge to interfere with His process. you let it rest in His hands. And while you rest in trust, God works in silence. There is nothing small about trust. Trust is a mountain-moving force. Trust is what separates the frantic from the faithful. It is what anchors you when the winds of uncertainty blow and the foundations of life are tested. And when others collapse under pressure, you will rise. Not because you are immune to the storm, but because you are tied to the one who cannot fall. You are grounded in a power that does not sway with circumstances. That power is not found in emotion. It is found in absolute, unwavering surrender to God. God never called you to carry the load alone. That's why so many are exhausted. But not from work, but from worry. Not from action, but from overthinking. Your soul is fatigued, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're carrying. You were not created to live on edge. You were not designed to live in dread. You were made to walk in peace, breathe in trust, and sleep in safety, knowing that God is awake when you are not. And if God is guarding your life, what are you really afraid of? Do not let your imagination become the enemy of your spirit. Many are tormented by things that haven't even happened, building scenarios and disasters in their minds that will never manifest. But while they worry about what might go wrong, they are missing what is going right. God is already covering things you don't know are coming. God is already blocking dangers you didn't see. And while you panic about the details, God has already declared the outcome. Let that truth steady your heart. Let it pull you out of the flood and place your feet on solid ground. Every time you surrender your worry to God, you are creating space for divine order to enter your life. You are exchanging confusion for clarity, restlessness for rhythm, tension for trust. God does not operate in chaos. God brings peace to chaos, but that peace cannot dwell where fear rules. So uproot that fear. Pull it out by the root. Replace it with faith, even if it's just a whisper. God, I believe you've got this. I don't see it yet, but I believe you in control. That simple statement spoken with conviction can silence the loudest storm inside your soul. God never wastes trust. You may not see the reward immediately. You may not feel the shift instantly. But trust that is given to God never returns empty. It always returns with wisdom or with strength or with provision in a form you didn't expect. And sometimes it returns with a peace so deep that it cannot be disturbed no matter what happens on the outside. That peace is the proof that you have released the grip. That peace is the mark of a soul aligned with heaven. And let me tell you, once you've lived in that kind of peace, you'll never go back. You'll never again tolerate the weight of worry. You'll never again trade your serenity for anxiety. You walk through life differently, not because life has gotten easier, but because your confidence in God has grown deeper. You'll wake up and say, God, you are the one Savior ever comes today. I trust God with it, and that trust will guard your heart like armor. That trust will guide your steps like a lamp. That trust will carry you through trials like a river carries a ship smoothly, steadily, strongly. Your enemies won't understand it. Your friends may question it. The world will call it foolish, but those who walk in faith understand that the greatest wisdom is trusting God, especially when everything else tells you not to. That is the life of power. That is the life of peace. That is the life of purpose. Not because everything is figured out, but because everything is placed in the hands of the one who already knows the end from the beginning. So I say to you now, don't wait until the pressure breaks you. Don't wait until the fear swallows you. Don't wait until the storm steals your voice. Decide now. Decide today. Decide in this moment. I will give it to God, and I will stop worrying. Not because it's easy, but because it's right, because it's holy, because it's what the soul was created to do. To trust, to rest, and to walk hand in hand with the one who never fails. And if you still feel unsure, if the fear still lingers, then do it trembling. Do it afraid, but do it anyway. Hand it over. Open your palms. Speak it out. God, I release this to you, all of it, and keep doing it again and again until worry no longer has a home in your heart. Until peace becomes your default, until trust becomes your rhythm, until your entire life declares this one truth: God is enough, God is able, God is in control. And now, beloved soul, let this truth be sealed in your heart with finality and fire. The weight you carry was never meant to be yours alone. The burden, the fear, the sleepless nights, the anxious thoughts, they were never yours to bear without divine strength. You've tried carrying it in silence. You've tried managing it with logic. You've tried suppressing it with distraction. But the peace you long for, the freedom you crave, the rest your soul needs, it all begins when you make the most powerful decision of your life, to give it to God and stop worrying. This is not just an emotional moment. It is a spiritual shift. It is the moment when you rise above fear and enter into a deeper trust. Not a trust that sways with circumstances, but a trust that stands when the earth shakes. It is the moment you say, I will no longer be ruled by what I cannot control. I will be ruled by the one who controls all. It is the moment when your heart aligns with divine order and the peace of God floods every corner of your life, mind, body, and soul. So walk forward now, not with your head bowed in fear, but with your spirit lifted in faith. Walk as one who knows that the battle belongs to God. Speak as one who trusts that the outcome is already written by the one who writes every destiny. Sleep as one who knows that God never sleeps. Breathe as one who has let go. Live as one who is truly free. The secret was never hidden. It was always waiting for your yes. The secret is not in figuring everything out. The secret is not in overthinking. The secret is not in striving, stressing, or surviving. The secret is this, and now you know it with your whole heart. Give it to God and stop worrying. My friend, let me ask you something that will shake the very foundation of your soul. What sits on the throne of your heart today? What drives your choices, your habits, your emotions, your thoughts, when you are alone in the silence of your own mind? Because if it's not God, then something else has taken his rightful place. And until you dethrone that idol, be it your pride, your fear, your family, your money, your desires, your pain, you will never walk in the fullness of peace and purpose that comes only from placing God first in your life. There's a reason why so many are restless today, like ships tossed on raging seas. It's not because they lack opportunity, intelligence, or love. It's because they've built their lives around everything except. They've constructed empires out of ego, castles out of comfort, and kingdoms out of control. But all of it and every bit will crumble to dust if God is not at the center. To put God first is not to add him to your schedule like an appointment you make and forget. It's not to sprinkle a little prayer over your plans and expect heaven to bend to your will. No, putting God first is a radical surrender. It is to wake up every single day and say, God, you are the reason I breathe. You are the reason I live. Without you, I am nothing. With you, I can face anything. Putting God first means reordering your soul. It means cleaning out the clutter of self and making room for His voice. It's not about being perfect, it's about being available. Available for His truth, His correction, His instruction, His direction. It's about inviting God into the innermost parts of your heart, not just the parts you show to the world. There is power in priority. And the moment you prioritize God above everything else will begin to fall into place. Not always the way you expect, but always the way that's best. Because God does not operate in confusion. He does not bless disobedience. He does not reward divided hearts. He pours out favor on those who fear Him, seek Him, trust Him, and walk with Him, no matter the cost. Let me be clear. This is not a casual suggestion. This is a command from heaven. God is not asking to be a part of your life. He demands to be the center of it. He's not interested in being a backup plan, a crisis manager, or a weekend activity. He is the source, not a supplement. And until you make Him your first thought in the morning, your deepest meditation at noon, and your last whisper before sleep, you will continue to chase after things that cannot satisfy. Some of you are trying to put God first while holding on to everything else. But you cannot walk two roads. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot carry God in one hand and your secret sins in the other. You cannot say you trust God and yet panic every time life shakes your foundation. You cannot say God is first and yet consult Him last. The truth is simple. God is either first or He is not there at all. Putting God first requires courage, because it means you must let go of what the world told you matters most. It means you might be misunderstood. It means you may walk alone at times. It means you might have to give up relationships that are pulling you away from God. It means you must break the chains of addiction, pride, and compromise. But oh, the freedom that follows. Oh, the peace that flows when God takes His rightful place. Too many people are searching for purpose without seeking the one who gives it. They run to self-help books, influencers, philosophies, and trends, all while the eternal truth stands quietly waiting to be heard. If you want to know who you are, go to the one who made you. If you want to be filled, go to the one who never runs dry. If you want direction, go to the one who sees the end from the beginning. If you want peace, go to God. But go all the way, not halfway, not with hesitation, with your whole heart. When you put God first, it affects every area of your life. Your words change because you speak with purpose. Your mind changes because you guard your thoughts. Your habits change because you walk with discipline. Your choices change because you seek His wisdom before making a move. Your relationships change because you no longer settle for people who don't honor the God you serve. Putting God first also means you stop trying to please everyone else. Because when God becomes your compass, the opinions of others lose their grip on your soul. You no longer live to be popular. You live to be faithful. You no longer chase validation. You stand in conviction. You no longer bend to pressure. You rise in principle. Let me tell you, the enemy fears the person who has put God first. He can't manipulate someone who's rooted in truth. He can't tempt someone who's anchored in righteousness. He can't shake someone who has built their life on the unmovable rock that is God. Hell trembles when a man or woman says, God, I surrender it all to you. Not just my Sundays, not just my prayers, but my entire life. You may say, but how do I begin? You begin by making time for God, not squeezing Him into your schedule, but crafting your schedule around Him. You begin by shutting out the noise of the world and listening for His still small voice. You begin by obeying even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient. Because obedience is the proof that God is first. Putting God first also means you place His word above your opinions. You don't argue with His commands. You don't negotiate with His standards. You submit. You align. You bend your will to His, because in doing so you are elevated, not in the eyes of man but in the eyes of God. Some of you have put other things first. Your pain, your past, your goals, your family, your comfort, your reputation. But none of those things can carry you through life's storms. None of those things can fill the void in your soul. None of those things can stand in the day of judgment. Only God. So why keep delaying what you already know to be true? Why keep circling the same mountain of doubt, fear, and distraction when you could be climbing the mountain of purpose, peace, and power hand in hand with God? Don't wait for a crisis to put God first. Don't wait for your plans to collapse, for your heart to break, for your strength to run out. Do it now. Do it while you still have breath in your lungs and fire in your soul. Because there is no greater pursuit, no higher calling, no richer reward than to live a life where God is truly first. And when you do, when you truly put God first, you will discover a power that no man can take, a joy that no storm can shake, a clarity that no
confusion can dim.
You will walk in divine alignment, and everything you need will be added unto you. Not always what you want, but always what is best for your soul. So rise up. Make the decision, tear down every idol, silence every voice that pulls you away, and crown God King of your heart, Lord of your days, ruler of your steps. Let His presence not just visit you, but dwell in you. Let His truth not just comfort you, but transform you. Let His guidance not just influence you, but govern you. Because until God is first, nothing else will work. Nothing else will satisfy. Nothing else will last. And some of you, yes, you listening now, are on the edge of a divine breakthrough. But it hinges on this one thing. Will you put God first, not with your lips, but with your life? So put Him first in your thoughts. Wake up thinking of Him, not of worry. Put Him first in your finances. Give not from leftovers, but from the first fruits of what He's given you. Put Him first in your time. Open your day with worship, not social media. Put Him first in your relationships. Stop entertaining those who weaken your walk with God. First in your dreams. Ask Him to direct, shape, and align them with His will. Put Him first in your pain. Bring your wounds to Him before you bring them to the world. Put Him first in your decisions. Consult Him before you commit. Put Him first in your battles. Seek His power before seeking men's solutions. Put Him first in your praise. Don't wait for perfect circumstances to thank Him. Put Him first in everything. Not just in moments, not just in emergencies, but in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the everyday. Because when God becomes your anchor, the winds can blow, but you will not sink. The storms can rage, but you will not fall. The fires can burn, but you will not be consumed. Your life was never meant to run on your own strength. It was meant to operate under divine order with God as the center, the source, the sovereign ruler of all. And when you step into that order, you step into supernatural peace. The world will offer you distractions, shortcuts, compromises, but none of them will satisfy. None of them will last. Only God will remain when all else fades. So why not give Him your everything now? The greatest tragedy is not a life without success. It's a life without God at the center. You can have everything, but if God is not first, you have nothing. And you can have nothing, but if God is first, you have everything. And hear me now. This world is not neutral ground. Every day is a battlefield for your soul. Every moment is a tug of war between light and darkness, between truth and deception, between the eternal and the temporary. And the only way to walk through this storm-tossed world with unshakable strength is to put God first. Not as a religious gesture, not as a spiritual hobby, but as your lifeline, your compass, your command center. Because the enemy will feed you lies that feel like truth. He will whisper comfort that hides the cost. He will package destruction to look like destiny. And unless God is your guide, you will fall into traps disguised as blessings. Putting God first is not a one-time declaration. It's a daily decision. A decision that rewires your thinking, restructures your values, and redefines what you call success. It's the kind of decision that says, even if I lose everything the world offers, but I still have God, I've lost nothing at all. And if I gain everything this world parades before my eyes, but lose the favor and nearness of God, then I have truly lost it all. When God becomes first, you no longer chase meaning in people, in applause, in wealth, or in status. You are no longer bound to the approval of man. You are no longer driven by the fear of missing out, because you are locked into a relationship with the one who sees what you cannot, knows what you do not, and gives what no one else can. When God becomes your everything, your soul stops begging for attention from everything else. You want to see transformation in your life. Stop asking God to bless your own will and start submitting to His. Too many people are asking for guidance while ignoring the map. Too many are praying for blessings while refusing to walk in obedience. You cannot expect the fire of heaven to fall on an altar you have not prepared. You must bring your heart, your time, your decisions, your relationships, everything, and lay it before God in humility and reverence. Let me tell you, when you put God first, it will cost you. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you popularity. It will cost you relationships. But what you gain is far more than what you give up. You gain clarity. You gain strength. You gain purpose. You gain protection. You gain alignment with the divine order of the universe. There's no blessing greater than walking in step with God. No gift higher than knowing you are pleasing to the one who formed you from dust and called you by name. Putting God first is not about emotion. It's about conviction. Because feelings will fail you. They will shift with the winds of circumstance. But conviction rooted in the reverence of God will hold you steady when everything else shakes, else falls apart. You must wake up every day with a firm, unshakable resolve that says, today God comes first before my worries, before my work, before my wants. God. You see, when God is not first, fear takes the throne. Anxiety becomes your master. Your mind becomes a battlefield of confusion, comparison, and compromise. But when God is first, peace floods your spirit. Direction becomes clearer. Life regains its meaning. You stop reacting and start discerning. You stop grasping and start receiving. You stop surviving and you start thriving. Putting God first also means learning to wait when the world says rush. It means trusting the process when the path is unclear. It means standing still when every voice tells you to move. Because when God is first, you are no longer driven by impulse. You are governed by purpose. You are not pushed by panic. You are led by power. You are not tossed by trends. You are rooted in truth. And yes, it takes discipline. It takes silence. It takes solitude, because God doesn't always shout. He often whispers. And if your life is too loud, you will miss His voice. If your agenda is too full, you will miss His timing. If your heart is too proud, you will miss His correction. Putting God first means creating space for Him, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It means turning off the noise and tuning into the eternal. Let me speak to those who feel distant from God, those who have wandered, drifted, gotten distracted. Hear this. It is never too late to make God first again. No matter how far you've run, one step back in humility opens the door to restoration. God does not require perfection. He desires sincerity. He responds not to performance but to surrender. And if you will humble yourself today, if you will lay down your pride and say, God, I have placed other things before you and but no more, He will meet you there, not with condemnation but with clarity, not with judgment but with mercy. He will realign your steps and reignite your soul, but you must choose. You must choose to cut ties with every idol, every distraction, every false refuge. You must choose to remove the clutter from the altar of your heart until there is only room for God. You must choose to seek Him when it's hard, to obey Him when it's costly. When you put God first, you start building on a foundation that cannot be shaken. You become like a tree planted by rivers of living water, whose leaves do not wither, whose fruit does not fail. You become a force of purpose in a world of confusion. You become a light in the shadows, a voice of truth in the chaos. And your life becomes a testimony, not of what you achieved, but of who you followed. People will look at you and say, there is something different. There is a strength in that man, a peace in that woman, a fire in that soul. And it won't be you they're seeing. It will be the evidence of God reigning at the center of your life. Putting God first is not just a personal benefit. It is a generational decision. The way you live today will echo in the lives of your children and their children. When you place God above all, you build a legacy of truth. You carve out a path of righteousness. You light a torch of faith that will not go out in the storms of time. So do not delay. Do not hesitate. Do not postpone what your spirit knows is urgent. Let today be the day you break free from the chains of self-reliance and step boldly into the power of full surrender. Let today be the day you say, God, no more distractions, no more delay, no more divided heart. You are my beginning and my end, my strength and my song, my vision and my victory. Because once God is first, everything else falls into its rightful place. Not always easier, but always better. Not always smoother, but always stronger. Not always painless, but always purposeful. The path may be narrow, the road may be steep, but the reward is beyond what this world can offer. When God is first, you stop living like a victim of your circumstances and start walking like a vessel of divine purpose. You stop asking why me and start declaring use me. Because putting God first reshapes your identity. You are no longer defined by what you've been through, but by who you belong to. No longer chained by the failures of your past, but empowered by the presence of God in your present. The moment God takes the throne of your life, your spirit rises above the dust of disappointment, and your vision breaks through the fog of confusion. You no longer live from a place of reaction. You live from a place of revelation. And hear this. Putting God first does not mean you will avoid hardship. It means you will not face it alone. It means the fire may come, but it will not consume you. The waters may rise, but they will not drown you. The winds may blow, but they will not uproot you. Because God, when He is first, becomes your refuge, your strength, your shield, your secret place. He becomes the reason you endure and the reason you overcome. You cannot experience the fullness of God's presence while living with divided loyalties. You cannot walk with God and flirt with rebellion. You cannot seek His guidance while ignoring His commandments. God is not a supporting character in your story. He is the author of it. And when you surrender your pen to Him, your life begins to tell a story that reflects divine wisdom, not human chaos. To put God first is to remove the mask, to stop pretending, stop hiding, stop performing. It is to bring your full self, broken, wounded, unsure, to the one who already knows and still calls you. It is to stop living by sight and start walking by trust, because trust is not based on what you see. Trust is rooted in who God is. Trust says, even when I don't understand the way, I will walk it because God is the one leading me. Putting God first requires honesty, brutal honesty. You must ask yourself, who really governs my decisions? Is it convenience? Is it comfort? Is it fear? Is it reputation? Or is it the will of God? Because you cannot walk in obedience to God while living in submission to fear. Fear will tell you to settle. Fear will tell you to stay silent. Fear will tell you that surrender is weakness. But putting God first means you rise above the voice of fear and walk in the power of faith. You want a stable life? Build it on the truth of God, not on emotions that shift like sand, not on culture that bends with the wind, not on people whose loyalty comes and goes, but on God who remains the same, yesterday, today, and forever. The unchanging, unmatched, unlimited God, and who calls you higher, draws you deeper, and leads you further than you could ever take yourself. This is not a call to lukewarm living. This is not an invitation to part-time faith. This is a summons to full surrender. God does not ask for pieces. He commands the whole. Your thoughts, your time, your energy, your heart, your desires, your fears, your goals, your grief, your joy, all of it. Lay it before God and say, take it, shape it, use it, align it with your will. That is what it means to put God first. Not to invite Him into your plans, but to abandon your plans and trust His. And some of you have walked long roads of disappointment. You've tried to do it all your own way. You've leaned on your own strength, your own understanding, your own strategy. But where has it brought you? Exhausted, confused, empty. Because a life without God at the center is a life destined to collapse under pressure. But the moment you reorder your priorities, when God becomes first, everything changes. Your mind finds clarity, your spirit finds strength, your home finds peace, your direction becomes clear. Because God is not the author of confusion, He is the giver of wisdom. He is not the promoter of chaos. He is the master of order. And when your life is ordered with God at the head, you begin to walk in divine rhythm, no longer stumbling in the dark, but stepping forward with confidence. Let me tell you something, the world won't. The life of true power is not found in control, it's found in surrender. The world says take charge, but God says submit. The world says follow your heart, but God says guard it. The world says live for yourself, but God says deny yourself and live for me. And only one of those voices leads to life. The question is, who will you follow? You can chase pleasure, but it fades. You can chase people, but they change. You can chase power, but it corrupts. But when you chase God, when you put Him first, you chase the only one who is eternal, the only one who sees you, knows you, and still chooses to walk with you, the only one who can fill the void, heal the wound, calm the storm, and light the path. Stop waiting for a perfect moment to start putting God first. Start in the middle of your mess. Start in the middle of your questions. Start with trembling hands and a weary heart if you must. But just start. God honors the heart that seeks him, even when that heart is broken. And when you do, and when you truly place God on the throne of your life, you will notice something begin to change, not just around you, but within you. Your appetite for meaningless things will die. Your thirst for truth will grow. Your vision will sharpen. Your peace will deepen. Your steps will steady. Because when God becomes first, everything else must bow. Everything else must yield. Let this be the season you stop making excuses and start making God your priority. Don't say, I'm too busy. God gave you time. Don't say, I'm too tired. God is your strength. Don't say it's too late. God is outside of time. Don't say I'm too broken. God specializes in making beauty from ashes. When God is first, you stop living like a victim of your circumstances and start walking like a vessel of divine purpose, and start declaring, use me, because putting God first reshapes your identity. You are no longer defined by what you've been through, but by who you belong to. No longer chained by the failures of your past, but empowered by the presence of God in your present. The moment God takes the throne of your life, your spirit rises above the dust of disappointment, and your vision breaks through the fog of confusion. You no longer live from a place of reaction. You live from a place of revelation. And hear this, putting God first does not mean you will avoid hardship. It means you will not face it alone. It means the fire may come, but it will not consume you. The waters may rise, but they will not drown you. The winds may blow, but they will not uproot you. Because God, when he is first, becomes your refuge, your strength, your shield, your secret place. He becomes the reason you endure and the reason you overcome. You cannot experience the fullness of God's presence while living with divided loyalties. You cannot walk with God and flirt with rebellion. You cannot seek his guidance while ignoring his commandments. God is not a supporting character in your story. He is the author of it. And when you surrender your pen to him, your life begins to tell a story that reflects divine wisdom, not human chaos. To put God first is to remove the mask, to stop pretending, stop hiding, stop performing. It is to bring your full self, broken, wounded, unsure, to the one who already knows and still calls you. It is to stop living by sight and start walking by trust. Because trust is not based on what you see. Trust is rooted in who God is. Trust says, even when I don't understand the way, I will walk it because God is the one leading me. Putting God first requires honesty. Brutal honesty. You must ask yourself, who really governs my decisions? Is it convenience? Is it comfort? Is it fear? Is it reputation? Or is it the will of God? Because you cannot walk in obedience to God while living in submission to fear. Fear will tell you to settle. Fear will tell you to stay silent. Fear will tell you that surrender is weakness. But putting God first means you rise above the voice of fear and walk in the power of faith. You want a stable life. Build it on the truth of God, not on emotions that shift like sand, not on culture that bends with the wind, not on people whose loyalty comes and goes, but on God, the one who never changes, bends with the wind, not on people whose loyalty comes and goes, but on God, who remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. The unchanging, unmatched, unlimited God who calls you higher, draws you deeper, and leads you further than you can ever take yourself. This is not a call to lukewarm living. This is not an invitation to part-time faith. This is a summons to full surrender. God does not ask for pieces. He commands the whole. Your thoughts, your time, your energy, Your heart, your desires, your fears, your goals, your grief, your joy, all of it. Lay it before God and say, take it, shape it, use it, align it with your will. That is what it means to put God first. Not to invite him into your plans, but to abandon your plans and trust his. And some of you have walked long roads of disappointment. You've tried to do it all your own way. You've leaned on your own strength, your own understanding, your own strategy. But where has it brought you? Exhausted, confused, empty. Because a life without God at the center is a life destined to collapse under pressure. But the moment you reorder your priorities, when God becomes first, everything changes. Your mind finds clarity, your spirit finds strength, your home finds peace, your direction becomes clear, because God is not the author of confusion. He is the giver of wisdom. He is not the promoter of chaos. He is the master of order. And when your life is ordered with God at the head, you begin to walk in divine rhythm, no longer stumbling in the dark, but stepping forward with confidence. Let me tell you something the world won't. The life of true power is not found in control. It's found in surrender. The world says take charge, but God says submit. The world says follow your heart, but God says guard it. The world says live for yourself, but God says deny yourself and live for me. And only one of those voices leads to life. And now let this be written in fire upon your soul. You cannot claim to honor God while exalting your ego. To truly put God first is to dethrone self. It is to crucify your pride, humble your ambitions, and bring your stubborn will into complete submission before the Almighty. This is not a casual nod to the heavens. It is a soul-deep realignment of everything you are and everything you do. Because until you remove yourself from the center, God cannot take his rightful place there. And as long as you remain the master of your own life, you will continue to reap the fruit of confusion, frustration, and spiritual dryness. You must understand God does not compete with your distractions. He does not fight for your attention. He is sovereign, holy, exalted far above all creation. He waits to be honored, not squeezed into your leftover minutes, or called upon only when trouble comes. He is not your emergency plan. He is the plan. He is not your final resort. He is your only source. And the moment you begin to live like that, your life will shift from survival to significance, from wandering to walking in divine direction. To put God first is to live with reverence. And reverence is not just about words. It is a posture of the heart. It is found in how you speak, how you think, how you treat others when no one is watching. Reverence is when you open your day by acknowledging God, not your to-do list. Reverence is when you pause before decisions and seek his wisdom, not your own understanding. Reverence is when you refuse to compromise, even when it would be easier, because you fear displeasing God more than losing the approval of man. The soul that places God first becomes untouchable by darkness, not because it is immune to pain, but because it is protected by presence. When God is your priority, his protection becomes your covering. His favor becomes your shield. His power becomes your strength. And even when you walk through valleys of hardship, you do not crumble because your confidence is not in circumstances. It is anchored in the one who holds all things in his hands. Many of you have been praying for breakthrough, for clarity, for healing, for doors to open. But let me ask you this with love and fire in my voice. Have you truly put God first? Or have you just expected him to bless your plans while you continue to live on your terms? You cannot unlock the fullness of divine power while keeping one foot in your own will. You must surrender both feet to the path God chooses. That is where the supernatural begins. Let me speak plainly. Putting God first will expose your idols. It will reveal the areas of your life that you've tried to hide from the light. It will test your allegiance. It will shake every false foundation you've built upon. But praise be to God, for He does not destroy you to shame you. He exposes you to restore you. The discomfort is the beginning of cleansing. The conviction is the start of transformation. And the moment you say, God, strip me of everything that has taken your place, that is the moment heaven begins to build you again. You cannot walk in divine favor while living with a divided heart. You must make a clean break from the things that have entangled you, whether it be toxic relationships, secret sin, misplaced priorities, or unhealthy attachments. If it competes with God, it must go. This is not about being extreme. This is about being obedient. Because obedience is not about convenience. It is about covenant. And when you honor God above all, He will honor you before all. Putting God first does not mean life becomes easier. It means life becomes ordered. Chaos may still swirl around you, but you will not be shaken. Temptations may still knock so, but they will not overtake you. The noise of the world may still shout, but your ears will be tuned to a higher voice. Because when God is first, everything else is filtered through His truth. And truth becomes your compass, not culture. Conviction becomes your anchor, not opinion. Faith becomes your fuel, not fear. There are some of you who feel spiritually stuck, like you're running in place, praying but not hearing, seeking but not finding. And I tell you this not to condemn, but to awaken. Revisit your priorities. Revisit the throne of your heart. Who or what have you placed above God? Is it your career, your reputation, your comfort, your pain? Whatever it is, if it comes before God, it has become your master, and it must be cast down. God does not desire a piece of you. He demands the whole, not because He is cruel, but because He knows that nothing less than full surrender will ever truly satisfy you. Half-hearted devotion leads to a half-filled soul, and a half-filled soul is a dangerous place to live. It leaves you vulnerable, unstable, easily deceived. But a life that is poured out before God is a life that overflows with strength, clarity, and purpose. So, apply this. Realign your focus. Rebuild your altar. Let your life be a living testimony that proclaims God is first now and forever. Let that decision govern how you speak, how you spend, how you serve, how you sacrifice. Let it guide what you watch, what you listen to, what you pursue, what you release. Every detail of your life matters to God. There is no area too small for His direction and no area too large for His power. The more you place God first, the more you will become like Him, steadfast, wise, patient, bold, and compassionate. You will no longer move by impulse, but by instruction. No longer live by survival, but by vision. No longer wrestle with identity, because your identity will be rooted in the One who never changes. This is not just a motivational idea. This is a divine order. Life does not work as it was meant to unless God is at the head. Families crumble when God is removed. Societies decay when God is forgotten. Souls wither when God is replaced. And the longer you wait to put Him back in His rightful place, the deeper the damage becomes. But praise be to the Almighty, for He restores what we surrender. He revives what we place back in His hand. And now I ask you, what will it take for you to stop living on the edge of full surrender? How long will you keep dipping your toes into the waters of faith, afraid to dive all the way in? How long will you keep God waiting outside the door of your heart while you entertain lesser things within? Every day you delay is a day you miss out on the depth, the power, the beauty of what it means to walk completely aligned with the will of God. Your life was not meant for fragments of obedience. It was designed to burn as a whole offering upon the altar of divine purpose. There comes a point where words are no longer enough, where lip service must become life's surrender, where the declaration that God is first must be echoed in the secret corners of your choices, not just the public stage of your speech. This is not about impressing people. It's about being found faithful by the one who sees in secret. Because when God looks upon your life, He doesn't weigh your outward actions alone. He searches the motives of your heart. He knows what you treasure. He knows what you fear. He knows where your loyalty lies. And He calls you not to shallow belief, but to deep conviction. Putting God first means you stop compartmentalizing your faith. It means there is no separation between the sacred and the secular. Every room of your heart becomes His. Every task becomes worship. Every breath becomes a prayer. Whether in the workplace or the quiet of your home, you carry the awareness of God. You don't leave Him behind in a house of worship. You take Him with you everywhere, because He is not confined to buildings. He is present in the boardroom, in the hospital, in the classroom, in the streets, in your suffering, in your triumph. And when God is first, you become conscious of His presence at all times, not in fear, but in reverent awe. Putting God first means you stop making decisions based on impulse, emotion, or opportunity. You begin to decide based on principle, prayer, and spiritual discernment. Not everything that looks good is from God. Not every open door is divinely appointed. Some doors are distractions dressed as destiny. Some opportunities are traps in disguise. But when God is first, you're not moved by what glitters. You're guided by what is grounded. You begin to test every option by asking, does this honor God? Does this draw me closer to Him or pull me away? And let me speak this clearly. You cannot put God first while continuing to feed habits that numb your spirit. You cannot seek Him while willingly dwelling in atmospheres that grieve Him. The heart that longs to truly place God first must walk away from whatever competes with His presence. It is not legalism, it is loyalty. It is not restriction, it is reverence. It is not fear, it is faith that says, God, you are worth more to me than any fleeting pleasure or shallow comfort. When God becomes the foundation of your thoughts begin to carry weight. You speak differently, you move differently. Your silence becomes strategic. Your words carry power, not just noise. Your goals stretch beyond the temporary. They begin to reflect eternity. Because when God is first, your life becomes a vessel of eternal impact. You no longer live just to exist. You live to fulfill a divine assignment. You no longer chase pleasure. You pursue purpose. There is a weight to putting God first. Yes, but it is a glorious weight, a beautiful burden, a sacred responsibility. It comes with favor, with clarity, and a peace that does not bend to circumstance. When God is first, you don't just endure life, you conquer it with courage. Because you know that God goes before you, stands behind you, and surrounds you on every side. You don't fear the future, because the one who holds the future holds your hand. And don't be deceived by the illusion of balance that the world offers. The world will say, just give a little time to everything. But the soul that puts God first knows He is not to be balanced with other things. He is to be above all things. You don't balance light and darkness. You don't balance truth and lies. You don't balance obedience and rebellion. You choose. You submit. You surrender. When God is first, you stop chasing after validation from others, because the approval of man becomes irrelevant. When your life is aligned with the will of God, your peace is not anchored in likes or applause. It is rooted in obedience. You are no longer desperate for affirmation because your worth is anchored in the one who formed you from the dust, breathed into you, and called you to rise. Some of you have been asking, where is God? Why don't I feel his power? Why don't I see his hand? And I tell you, team with love and with urgency, it is not that God has disappeared. It is that something else has taken first place. And the moment you return God to the throne of your life, the floodgates of his power will be released once again. Your heart will beat with clarity. Your spirit will feel light. Your mind will find focus, because God does not dwell in divided temples. He abides where he is honored, obeyed, and enthroned. So now is the time, not next week, not when things settle down, not when you feel more ready. Now, right here in the middle of your questions, your confusion, your battles, make the shift. Set the order. Tear down the false altars and build a new one, one where only God sits. And from that altar, let your life burn as an offering, unashamed, unwavering, uncompromised. Do not wait until your soul is dry. Do not wait until life brings you to your knees. Choose now to give God your highest place. Let the fire of your devotion burn brighter than the fire of temptation. Let your hunger for truth outweigh your desire for comfort. Let your loyalty to God surpass every earthly tie. Let your eyes be fixed on the eternal, and let your heart echo the anthem of heaven. God, you are first in all things. My time, my strength, my dreams, my fears, you are first. And when that becomes more than words, when it becomes your reality, then you will know what it means to truly live, not just to breathe, not just to exist, but to walk in divine power, sustained by the presence of God, ordered by his wisdom, and anchored in his purpose. That is the life you were created for. That is the life that begins the moment God is no longer part of your life, but the center of it, the crown of it, the fire within it. Put God first and never look back.